Edward Langley painted light the way most people breathe instinctively, effortlessly, as if his brush were merely translating what his soul already knew. For 43 years, he captured not faces or landscapes, but the way morning felt on skin, the way grief looked in shadow. Then one April morning, while preparing his final exhibition, a stroke silenced the world. His eyes still opened, his retinas still worked, but his brain's visual cortex went dark, and with it, every color he had ever loved. The doctors offered no hope. His wife Clara refused to accept silence. And in that refusal, in the space between memory and impossibility, something extraordinary began. Now, let's find out what really happened.
I remember the last thing I ever saw. It was Clara's face, wet, with tears, illuminated by the cold fluorescent light of the hospital corridor. Her mouth was moving, but I couldn't hear the words yet. The sound came later, after the light disappeared, after everything disappeared. They told me it happened in my studio. I was mixing cadmium yellow with a touch of white, preparing the base layer for a portrait commission. The woman's name was Elizabeth something. I never finished her painting. I never saw her face again. I never saw any face again. The stroke took 67 seconds, they said. I don't remember falling. I don't remember the ambulance. I only remember that final image of Clara, frozen in my mind like a photograph left too long in the sun. And then darkness. Complete, absolute, permanent. When I woke, I could hear machines beeping. I could smell antiseptic and something else, something floral. Lilacs, maybe. I could feel Clara's hand gripping mine, her skin warm and slightly damp. But I couldn't see her. I couldn't see anything. I tried to open my eyes. They were already open. I tried to move my hand toward where I thought the light should be. There was no light. The doctor's voice came from somewhere to my left. "Mr. Langley, can you hear me?" I nodded. Or I think I nodded. Everything felt disconnected, like I was operating a body I'd never learned to use. He explained it to me slowly, carefully, the way you might explain death to a child. My eyes were fine. My optic nerves were intact. The stroke had destroyed the visual cortex in the back of my brain, the part that interprets what the eyes send. Without it, I was blind, completely, irreversibly. I asked if it would come back. The silence that followed told me everything. Clara's hand tightened around mine. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. "We'll figure this out," she said. "We'll find a way." I wanted to believe her, but lying there in that hospital bed, listening to the machines measure my broken body, I knew the truth. I was a painter. I painted light, and now the light was gone. They kept me in the hospital for 12 days. I learned to count time by sounds. Breakfast arrived when the hallway cart squeaked past at 8 o'clock. Lunch came with the smell of overcooked vegetables and the distant murmur of a television. Dinner was marked by Clara's footsteps, always the same rhythm, always arriving just after the 6 o'clock medication rounds. She talked to me constantly about the weather, about our daughter calling from Seattle, about the neighbor's dog that kept digging up the garden. Normal things, safe things. She never mentioned my studio. She never mentioned painting. On the 13th day, they sent me home. Clara guided me from the car to the front door, her hand on my elbow, her voice soft and constant. "3 steps up. Now turn left. The door is right here." Inside, the house smelled the same. Coffee and old wood and Clara's lavender soap. But it felt different, smaller, like the walls had moved closer while I was gone. She led me to the living room. She sat me in my chair, the leather one by the window. I used to sit here every morning, with my coffee, watching the light change across the garden. Now I just sat, listening to Clara move through the house, listening to the clock tick, listening to my own breathing. I didn't ask about the studio. I didn't want to know. The first week passed in a kind of numb silence. Clara tried to keep routines. She made my favorite meals. She read to me in the evenings. She played music, though I couldn't focus on it. Everything sounded muffled, distant, like I was listening through water. At night, I lay awake and replayed that last image. Clara in the hospital hallway, the fluorescent light, the tears on her face. I tried to remember other things. Our wedding day, the view from our honeymoon in Tuscany, the painting I'd sold for $20,000, the one that had made my career. But those memories were fading, becoming abstract. I could remember the feeling of them, but not the image, like trying to hold water in your hands. I realized something then, lying in the dark. Memory is visual. Without sight, memory becomes unmoored. It drifts. It dissolves. I was losing more than my eyes. I was losing my past. The second week, Clara brought visitors. Friends from the art community, colleagues, students I'd taught. They came with flowers I couldn't see and words I didn't want to hear. They spoke too loudly, too carefully, like I'd lost my hearing instead of my sight. One of them, Michael, had been my closest friend for 20 years. He sat beside me and talked about a gallery opening, about new techniques in oil painting, about the way morning light looked on the river that week. I listened to him describe the colors, the compositions, the way other artists were capturing movement and shadow. I asked him to leave. I asked them all to leave. Clara didn't argue. She saw them out quietly. When she came back, she sat beside me and said nothing, just held my hand. And I realized that silence was the only honest thing left. By the third week, I stopped getting out of bed. There was no point. The day had no shape without light. Morning felt the same as afternoon felt the same as midnight. Time became a flat line, punctuated only by meals. I didn't want and sleep I couldn't find. Clara tried everything. She opened the curtains and described the weather. She brought me tea and toast. She played recordings of my favorite music. Nothing worked. I was disappearing, and I didn't have the strength to stop it. One afternoon, I heard her crying in the kitchen. She tried to muffle it, but sound travels differently when you can't see. Everything becomes sharper, more distinct. I heard every breath, every sob. I wanted to go to her. I wanted to tell her it would be okay. But I couldn't move, because it wouldn't be okay. And we both knew it. That night, she didn't come to bed. I heard her moving around downstairs, opening drawers, shuffling papers. I didn't ask what she was doing. I just lay there, staring at nothing, waiting for sleep that wouldn't come. Around 2 in the morning, I heard something else. A voice, my voice, coming from downstairs. Clara was playing an old recording, one of my lectures from the university. I recognized it immediately. It was from 7 years ago, a talk I'd given on color theory and emotional resonance. I listened to my own voice, younger and stronger, explaining how light wasn't just physics, how it carried meaning, how painters didn't capture what they saw, but what they felt. And then I heard myself say something I'd forgotten I'd ever said. You don't paint what you see. You paint what you love. The recording stopped. The house went quiet. But those words stayed, hanging in the darkness like a question. I didn't know how to answer. I lay there for hours, turning that sentence over in my mind. What did I love? What had I ever loved besides light itself? And then I realized I loved Clara. I loved the garden in spring. I loved the smell of linseed oil. I loved the weight of a brush in my hand. I loved the moment before the first stroke, when the canvas was still infinite with possibility. Those things hadn't disappeared. I had just stopped reaching for them. The next morning, I got out of bed. Clara heard me moving and came upstairs quickly, her footsteps anxious. I told her I wanted to go to the studio. She hesitated. Are you sure? I wasn't sure. but I nodded anyway. She took my hand and led me down the hallway. I counted the steps. 14 from the bedroom to the studio door. I used to walk this path 50 times a day without thinking. Now, every step felt precarious, like walking on ice. The door creaked when she opened it. The smell hit me immediately. Turpentine and dried paint and old canvas. It was overwhelming. It was home. She guided me inside. The floor was still sticky in places where I'd spilled paint years ago. I could feel the uneven boards beneath my feet, each one familiar. She led me to the center of the room and stopped. I stood there, surrounded by canvases I couldn't see, brushes I couldn't use, a life I couldn't return to. "What do you want to do?" she asked gently. I didn't answer. I didn't know. She waited. She was good at waiting. Finally, I said, "Tell me what's here." She took a breath. Then she began. "Your easel is in front of you, about 3 feet away. There's a canvas on it, the one you were working on. Elizabeth's portrait. It's mostly blank, just the yellow underpainting you started." I nodded. "What else?" "To your left, the supply cabinet. Still full. Brushes sorted by size. Paints organized by color. Everything exactly where you left it." "What else?" "Behind you, the window. It's open. The curtains are moving. There's a breeze coming through, warm. The garden is blooming. Roses mostly. The red ones you planted for our anniversary." I turned toward the window. I couldn't see the roses, but I could smell them, sweet and heavy and alive. Clara moved closer. She touched my arm. "Edward, what are you thinking?" I was thinking about that lecture, about painting what you love, about how I'd spent 43 years capturing light, but I'd never once painted the thing that mattered most. I turned back toward where she'd said the easel was. I took 3 careful steps forward. My shin bumped against the wood. I reached out and felt the canvas. Rough. Cool. Empty? I ran my fingers across its surface, feeling the texture of the weave. My thumb found the edge of the yellow underpainting. Still tacky, still unfinished. "I can't see it," I said. "I know. I can't paint without seeing." Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Maybe. Or maybe you just paint differently now." I wanted to argue. I wanted to explain why that was impossible. But something in her voice stopped me. "What do you mean?" I asked. She came closer. I felt her hand cover mine on the canvas. "You spent your whole life looking at light," she said. "You know it better than anyone. You remember it." "Maybe that's enough." I shook my head. "Memory isn't the same as sight. Maybe it's better." I didn't believe her, but I didn't let go of the canvas either. That night, I couldn't sleep again. But this time it wasn't from despair. It was from something else. Something I didn't have a name for yet. I kept thinking about the canvas, about the yellow underpainting, about the portrait I'd never finish, about all the paintings I'd never start. Around 3 in the morning, I got up. Clara was asleep beside me, her breathing slow and steady. I moved carefully, quietly. 14 steps to the studio door. I counted them in the dark. Inside, I felt my way to the easel. The canvas was still there. I touched it again, running my fingers across the rough surface. I tried to imagine what it looked like. Yellow, warm, alive with potential. I found the supply cabinet by memory. I opened the drawer where I kept my brushes. They were organized by size, just like Clara had said. I selected one by feel, medium, round, good for detail work. I found the palette. I squeezed out paint, working by touch and smell. Cadmium red, ultramarine blue, titanium white. The tubes were in the same order I'd kept them for decades. I mixed colors I couldn't see. I loaded the brush with paint I couldn't verify. And then I brought it to the canvas. I stopped. My hand was shaking. I lowered the brush. I stood there in the dark, holding it like a weapon I'd forgotten how to use. I couldn't do it. I couldn't make the first stroke. Because once I did, I would know. I would know whether painting was still possible, or whether that part of me had died with my sight. I put the brush down. I left the studio. I went back to bed. Clara was still asleep. I lay beside her and stared at nothing until the sun came up, or at least until I heard the birds that meant the sun had come up. The next day, Clara found the palette. The paint was still wet. She didn't say anything. She just cleaned it and put everything away. I spent the rest of the week avoiding the studio, but I couldn't stop thinking about it, about the canvas, about the brush in my hand, about the moment I'd almost painted. Clara kept trying to pull me back. She suggested we take a walk. She read me articles about adaptive technology for blind artists. She played more of my old lectures. I listened without hearing. I nodded without responding. I was stuck somewhere between wanting to try and being terrified of failing. Then one evening, she did something different. She didn't ask if I wanted to paint. She didn't suggest anything. She just took my hand and led me to the studio. She sat me down in front of the easel. She put a brush in my hand, and she said, "I'm going to tell you what colors you're using. You're going to paint. We're going to do this together." I started to protest. She cut me off. "No," she said firmly. "No excuses. No fear. You're a painter, so paint." Her voice left no room for argument. So I didn't argue. She guided my hand to the palette. "This is blue," she said. "Ultramarine, deep and rich. Remember how it looks." I did remember. I remembered the way it dominated a canvas, the way it receded and advanced depending on what you put beside it, the way it held shadows better than any other color. She loaded my brush. "Now put it here," she said, touching the canvas. "Right here. This is the top left corner. Make a stroke downward." I hesitated. Then I moved the brush. I felt the paint release onto the canvas. Smooth, controlled, familiar. "Good," she said. "Now again, lighter this time." We worked like that for an hour. She told me what colors I was using. She guided my hand to different parts of the canvas. She described what I was creating. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. The weight of the brush, the resistance of the canvas, the way the paint moved under my hand. When we stopped, Clara stepped back. She was quiet for a long time. "What is it?" I asked. She took a breath. "Edward, it's beautiful." I didn't believe her. How could it be beautiful? I couldn't see what I was painting. I was working blind, following her directions like a puppet. But she insisted. She described what I'd made. Abstract shapes in blue and white, movement and depth, light emerging from darkness. "It sounds like something," I said. "It looks like hope," she answered. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks. And when I woke, I wanted to paint again. We fell into a rhythm. Every afternoon, Clara and I worked in the studio. She became my eyes, describing colors and placement. I became her hands, translating her words into brush strokes. At first, I resisted. I wanted control. I wanted to paint the way I always had, making every decision, seeing every result. But that wasn't possible anymore. So I learned to let go. I learned to trust her. She would say, "Put yellow here, right in the center, warm and bright." And I would paint. She would say, "Now blend it with orange, softer, let them breathe together." And I would blend. She never told me what to paint. She just helped me find my way to what was already in my mind. After 2 weeks of daily sessions, something shifted. I stopped thinking about what I was making and started feeling it. The canvas became an extension of my memory. When Clara said blue, I didn't just hear the word. I felt the coolness of it. When she said red, I felt heat. One afternoon, I stopped in the middle of a stroke. Clara asked if something was wrong. I shook my head. "No, I can feel the light." "What do you mean?" I don't know how to explain it. When you tell me where to put yellow, I can feel where the warmth should go. Like the canvas has temperature. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, maybe it always did. Maybe you're just noticing it now. I thought about that, about all the years I'd spent painting light, without thinking about what it actually was. Heat, energy, life. Maybe you're right, I said. A few days later, something strange happened. We were working on a new piece, something abstract. Clara told me to use green in the lower right corner. I mixed the color by smell and memory, viridian and a touch of yellow. I loaded the brush and brought it to where I thought the corner should be. But I stopped. This isn't right, I said. Clara checked. You're in the right spot. Lower right corner. No, I mean the color. It's wrong for this area. It should be cooler. More blue. She looked at the canvas, then at the palette, then at me. Edward, you're right. How did you know? I didn't know. I just felt it. She adjusted the mixture, adding more blue. I painted the stroke, and even though I couldn't see it, I knew it was right. Clara called it intuition. I called it memory. But whatever it was working. My paintings were becoming more than just exercises. They were becoming art again. That weekend, Clara suggested we invite someone to see the work. I immediately refused. Why not? She asked. Because it's not ready. Because I don't know if it's any good. Because the idea of someone looking at paintings I can't see terrifies me. She didn't push. But the next day, I heard her on the phone. She was calling Dr. Finch, the neurologist who'd treated me in the hospital. She wasn't asking him to visit as a guest. She was asking him to visit as a researcher. He arrived the following Tuesday. I heard his car pull up, heard Clara, greeting him at the door, heard them talking in low voices as they walked to the studio. I was already there, standing in front of my latest canvas. My hands were in my pockets. I didn't know what else to do with them. Mr. Langley, he said. His voice was measured, professional. Thank you for agreeing to this. I didn't agree to anything, I said. Clara touched my shoulder. He just wants to observe. Maybe run a few tests. It might help other people. I wanted to argue, but I was curious too, about what was happening in my brain. About whether what I was feeling was real or just wishful thinking. Fine, I said. What do you need? Dr. Finch set up equipment. I heard the rustle of wires, the beep of machines, the scratch of notes being written. He attached sensors to my head, explaining each one as he went. Then he asked me to paint. Clara and I worked the way we always did. She described colors. I applied them. She guided me. I followed. But this time, Dr. Finch interrupted. Stop, he said. Right there. Don't move. I froze, brush in midair. I'm seeing activity, he said, mostly to himself. In the visual cortex. It's faint, but it's there. That's impossible, Clara said. The stroke destroyed that area. Not entirely, Dr. Finch replied. There's damage, significant damage. But there are still neurons firing. The brain is trying to compensate. What does that mean? I asked. He took a moment before answering. It means your brain is attempting to rebuild visual pathways. When you paint, even though you can't see, you're activating the same neural circuits you used to use. Memory, imagination. They're feeding back into the damaged areas. So he's not seeing, Clara said. No, Dr. Finch confirmed. But his brain is processing visual information. Just differently. I lowered my brush. Can I get my sight back? The silence that followed told me everything. I don't know, he finally said. The brain is capable of remarkable things. But I can't promise anything. I nodded. I'd learned not to hope for miracles. But Dr. Finch wasn't finished. However, he continued, I would like to continue monitoring you. Document your progress. Study what's happening. This could be significant for rehabilitation research. Clara looked at me. I couldn't see her expression, but I could hear the question in her silence. "Okay," I said, "but I paint for me, not for science." "Understood," Dr. Finch said. Over the next few weeks, he visited regularly. He brought more equipment. He took more readings. He asked detailed questions about what I felt when I painted, whether I experienced any visual sensations, whether my dreams had changed. I told him the truth, that I felt warmth and coolness, that certain colors had weight, that I knew where light should fall without knowing how I knew. But I didn't tell him about the flickers. They'd started about a week before, brief moments where I thought I saw something. Not images exactly, more like the memory of light, a flash behind my eyelids, a glow that lasted half a second, then disappeared. I didn't mention them because I didn't trust them. They could have been wishful thinking, hallucinations, the mind creating what it desperately wanted to see. But they were happening more often, and they always came when I was painting. The studio became more than a workspace. It became a ritual. Clara and I moved through our sessions with the precision of dancers who'd rehearsed the same routine 1,000 times. She described, I painted. We breathed together. I started to understand something I'd never grasped before. That painting wasn't about the eyes. It was about connection, between the hand and the heart, between memory and imagination, between two people trying to create something that mattered. Clara wasn't just telling me where to put paint. She was showing me how she saw the world. And in doing so, she was giving me back a kind of sight I'd never had before. One afternoon, she described a sunset. She was watching through the studio window. She told me about the layers of color, orange bleeding into pink, purple shadows gathering at the edges, the way the light made the roses glow. I listened. I mixed colors by instinct, and I painted what she was seeing. When I finished, she was crying. I could hear it in her breathing. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing," she said. "Nothing is wrong. You just painted exactly what I was looking at." "Exactly. That's because you told me what to paint." "No," she said. "I told you what I saw. You painted what it meant. I didn't understand the difference, but I didn't need to. The painting was done, and something about it felt right." Dr. Finch came by that evening. He'd asked to document some of the finished pieces. When he saw the sunset painting, he went quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "This is extraordinary." "It's just a sunset," I replied. "No," he said, "it's not. The composition, the color relationships, the emotional resonance, this is the work of someone who can see. But I can't see. Then you're remembering in ways most people can't even imagine." He took samples, brain scans, measurements. He asked if he could present my case at a medical conference. I told him to do whatever he wanted. I didn't care about conferences. I just wanted to keep painting. The flickers were getting stronger. Sometimes they lasted a full second, sometimes two. They came in colors now. Red, mostly, but occasionally blue or gold. I still didn't tell anyone, because I was afraid. Afraid that if I acknowledged them, they would disappear. Afraid that they were nothing. Afraid that they were something. One evening, Clara asked me what I wanted to paint next. We'd finished several pieces over the past months. Abstract work, mostly. Experiments in color and texture, but nothing representational. Nothing that required me to see what I was painting. "I want to try a portrait," I said. She hesitated. "Of who?" "Of you." "Edward, I know I can't see you, but I remember you. I've looked at your face every day for 29 years. I know it better than I know my own." She didn't respond immediately. I heard her moving across the room. Then she sat down in what I assumed was the chair near the window. "Okay," she said softly. "Tell me what you need. We work differently this time." She didn't tell me what colors to use. I decided that myself. She only told me placement, where her eyes were in relation to the canvas, where her hairline began, where the shadows fell. I painted from memory, the curve of her jaw, the way her hair caught light, the small scar above her left eyebrow, from when she'd fallen off her bike at age 12. It took 3 sessions. When I finished, I asked her what it looked like. She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaking. "It looks like me," she said. "It really looks like me. Is it good?" "It's perfect." But I knew she was lying. Not about it looking like her, about it being perfect. Because perfection required precision I no longer possessed. Still, I was proud of it. It was the first representational piece I'd completed since the stroke. And whether it was good or not, it was proof that I could still translate what I loved into color and form. Dr. Finch saw it during his next visit. He stared at it for a long time. Then he looked at me. "How?" he asked simply. "Memory," I said. "It's more than memory. The anatomical proportions, the lighting, the way you've captured her expression. This shouldn't be possible. And yet it is." He took more measurements, more scans. The activity in my visual cortex was increasing. Not much, but measurably. He called it unprecedented. I called it painting. That night, I lay in bed and thought about the portrait. About Clara's face rendered in colors I couldn't verify. About the years we'd spent together. About the life we'd built. I thought about what Dr. Finch had said, that it shouldn't be possible. But maybe impossible was just another word for things we hadn't learned to do yet. I closed my eyes, and behind my eyelids, I saw red. Bright, clear, unmistakable. It lasted 3 full seconds before fading. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Because for the first time since the stroke, I wasn't imagining light. I was experiencing it. The next morning, I told Clara about the flickers, about the colors I thought I was seeing, about the red that had lasted longer than ever before. She was cautious. Hopeful, but cautious. She asked if I'd told Dr. Finch. I said not yet. I wanted to be sure first. "Sure of what?" she asked. "That I'm not losing my mind." "You're not losing your mind," she said firmly. "You're finding something." I wanted to believe her, but hope was dangerous. I'd learned that in the hospital. Hope made the darkness harder to bear. Still, I couldn't ignore what was happening. The flickers were becoming more frequent, more vivid. They came mostly when I was painting, but sometimes they came at random. A flash of blue while Clara was talking. A burst of yellow when I smelled coffee. Dr. Finch noticed the change immediately during his next visit. The readings were different, stronger, more organized. "What's happening to me?" I asked. He chose his words carefully. "Your brain is reorganizing. The damaged areas are being bypassed. Other regions are taking over visual processing. It's rare, but it happens. Will I see again? I don't know. But something is changing. And whatever it is, it's significant." That week, I decided to try something new. I asked Clara to take me outside, to the garden. I wanted to paint what I used to see every morning through the studio window. She set up an easel on the patio. She brought my supplies. She positioned me facing east, where the roses grew. "Describe it," I said. She did. The deep red of the petals, the green of the leaves, the way morning light made everything glow, the bees moving between blooms, the dew still clinging to stems. I painted, not what she was describing, but what I remembered, what I knew should be there. And as I painted, something happened. Behind my closed eyelids, color bloomed. Red, deep and vibrant. The red of roses in full sun. I gasped. The brush fell from my hand. Clara grabbed my shoulders. "What's wrong?" "Edward, talk to me. I can see red," I whispered. "I can see it." "Right now?" "Where? What are you seeing?" "Behind my eyes. It's like a photograph. like memory, but brighter, more real. She held me tight. "Don't move," she said. "Stay with it. Tell me what you see." I tried to hold on to the image, but it was already fading, slipping back into darkness. "No," I said. "No, don't go. Please." And then it was gone. Just darkness again. I reached for Clara's hand. "Did you hear what I said? Did I really see it?" "You really saw it," she confirmed. "I heard you. I believed you." I sat there shaking, because for the first time in months, I had seen color. Not imagined it, not remembered it, seen it. And if I could see red, maybe I could see more. The red came back. Not immediately, not predictably, but it came back. First in flashes, then in longer stretches, sometimes lasting 10 seconds, sometimes 15. Always when I was painting, always when I was thinking about light. Dr. Finch was fascinated. He brought in colleagues. They ran tests I didn't understand, using equipment I couldn't see. They discussed neural pathways and cortical reorganization and words. That meant nothing to me. All I cared about was the red, about whether it would stay, about whether other colors would follow. Clara asked if I was scared. I told her no. I told her I was grateful. But that was only half true. I was terrified, because I didn't know what this meant. I didn't know if it would last. I didn't know if I could survive losing color a second time. We kept painting, every day, sometimes twice a day. I chased the flickers of light like a man chasing ghosts. Sometimes they came, sometimes they didn't. I learned I couldn't force them. I could only create the conditions and wait. One morning in early June, I woke before dawn. Clara was still sleeping beside me. I lay there listening to her breathe, watching nothing, waiting for nothing. Then I had an idea, a strange one, probably a stupid one, but I couldn't shake it. I wanted to paint a sunrise, not from memory, but as it was happening. I wanted Clara to describe it in real time, and I wanted to paint what she was seeing in the moment she was seeing it. I woke her gently. She was confused at first. "It's not even 5 o'clock, she murmured. "I know, but I need to paint. I need to paint the sunrise. Right now." She didn't argue. She got up, helped me to the studio, set up the easel by the window. I heard her open the curtains. "It's still dark," she said. "Just a little gray in the east. You want to start now?" "Yes. Tell me when the light begins." We waited. I stood with my brush ready, paint already mixed. Clara sat by the window watching the sky. Minutes passed. Maybe 5, maybe 10. "There," she said. "A line of orange, just above the horizon, very faint, like someone drew it with a finger." I painted. Quick strokes. "Horizontal, where I thought the horizon should be." "It's getting brighter," she continued. "The orange is spreading, mixing with pink. The clouds are catching light. Gold on the edges, purple underneath." I painted faster, mixing colors by instinct, applying them where her words suggested they belonged. "Now yellow," she said. "Bright yellow, breaking through. The sun is coming up. Oh, Edward, it's beautiful." I painted. My hand moved without thinking. The brush became an extension of Clara's voice, and something was happening. I could feel it. Not the warmth of the sun. I couldn't feel that yet. But something else. A pressure behind my eyes. A gathering brightness. "The sky is on fire," Clara said. "Orange, gold, red. Everything is red." And then it happened. Behind my closed eyelids, I saw it. Saw it. The red she was describing. Not as a flicker, not as a flash, but as a sustained image. Brilliant, glowing, alive. I dropped the brush. My hands went to my face. I pressed my palms against my eyes, like I could hold the light inside. "Edward," Clara said. "What's happening?" "I can see it," I said. My voice broke. "I can see the red. I can see it right now." It's here. It's really here. She came to me quickly, wrapped her arms around me. Keep looking, she whispered. Don't let it go. I tried. I fought to hold on to it, but my whole body was shaking. I was crying, laughing. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. The red was still there, still burning behind my closed lids, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever experienced. Slowly, it began to fade. The brightness dimmed. The image lost focus, and then it was gone. Back to darkness. But it had been there. I had seen it. Not remembered. Not imagined. Seen. Clara held me for a long time. Neither of us spoke. We just stood there in the growing light while I tried to catch my breath. When I finally calmed down, I asked her to call Dr. Finch. She did. He arrived within the hour, still in the clothes he'd slept in. He ran every test he had. EEG, brain scans, visual response measurements. He asked me to describe exactly what I'd seen. When? How long? How bright? I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "This shouldn't be possible." But it happened. I know. That's what makes it remarkable. Your visual cortex is severely damaged. By all accounts, you should never process visual information again. But something in your brain has found another way. What way? He hesitated. I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. Over the next few days, the color returned more frequently. Not just red anymore. Orange appeared, then yellow. Always warm colors. Always when I was painting. Always connected to Clara's descriptions. Dr. Finch theorized that my brain was rebuilding visual pathways. Through memory and imagination, that the act of painting was creating new neural connections. That Clara's voice was providing the framework. My brain needed to reconstruct images. I didn't care about the science. I only cared that I was seeing again. Even if it was incomplete. Even if it was only colors. Even if it lasted just seconds. It was enough. It was more than enough. Clara asked me what I wanted to paint next. I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, I want to paint us. Us. You and me. Together. The way I remember us. The way we are now. She helped me set up a large canvas. We worked on it for days. She described our faces, our hands, the space between us. I painted from memory and feeling, from 29 years of loving her. And as I painted, the colors came. Red, orange, gold, brief flashes that guided my hand. That told me where warmth should live on the canvas. When we finished, Clara stood back and looked at it for a long time. Then she said, "We should show this to people." "No," I said immediately. "Why not?" "Because I don't know if it's any good. Because I painted it blind. Because—" "Edward," she interrupted, "it's extraordinary. People should see it. People should know what you've done." I wanted to refuse, but something in her voice stopped me. She believed in this. In me. In what we'd created together. "Okay," I said. "But just a small showing. Just a few people?" She agreed. But I should have known better. Clara had never done anything small in her life. 3 weeks later, she'd organized an exhibition. A real one. At a gallery downtown. She'd contacted friends, colleagues, art critics. She'd arranged everything without asking my permission. When she told me, I was furious. "How could you do this without telling me?" "Because you would have said no." "You're right. I would have said no. These paintings aren't meant for exhibition. They're therapy. They're exercises. They're art, Edward. Real art. Maybe the best work you've ever done." I shook my head. "You can't know that. I can't even see them." "I can see them. Dr. Finch can see them. Everyone who's looked at them can see them. And they're beautiful. They deserve to be shared." I wanted to fight her, but I was exhausted. And maybe part of me wanted this too. Wanted to know if what I was creating mattered to anyone besides us. Fine, I said, but I'm not giving a speech. Fair enough, she agreed. The exhibition was scheduled for the last Friday in June. As the date approached, I grew more anxious. What if people hated the work? What if they saw it as the desperate attempts of a blind man, pretending to be an artist? What if I'd been fooling myself this entire time? Clara sensed my fear. She didn't try to talk me out of it. She just kept working with me, kept painting with me, kept showing me that what we were doing was real. The night before the exhibition, I couldn't sleep. Clara lay beside me, her hand in mine. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Terrified," I admitted. "Me too." That surprised me. "Why are you scared?" "'Cause I want people to see what I see. I want them to understand what you've done, what you've overcome. And I'm afraid they won't." "They probably won't," I said. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe this was never for them anyway." She squeezed my hand. "Then why did we do it?" "Because you were right. Love taught my brain to see again. And maybe that's a story worth sharing." The gallery was crowded. I heard voices everywhere. Footsteps on hardwood. The clink of glasses. Clara had told me to expect maybe 30 people. It sounded like more than 100. She guided me through the room, describing the layout. Paintings on the walls, people clustered in groups, critics taking notes, journalists asking questions. I felt exposed, vulnerable. Every painting on these walls represented a moment I couldn't verify, a choice I'd made without seeing the result, and now strangers were judging them. Judging me, someone approached, a woman. Her voice was familiar. "Mr. Langley, I'm Rebecca Chen from the Arts Journal. I'd love to ask you a few questions." I'd met her years ago at another exhibition. She'd written a favorable review of my work. Now she was here to document my decline. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "How does it feel to be painting again after everything you've been through?" "Honestly, terrifying." She laughed softly. "Can you tell me about your process? How you approach the canvas now?" I explained it as best I could. Clara's descriptions, my memory, the way colors felt rather than looked, the flickers of light that had started returning. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I've been looking at your new work for the past 20 minutes, and I have to tell you, it's different from your earlier paintings. But it's not lesser. If anything, it's more honest." "What do you mean?" "Your old work was technically perfect, beautiful, but there was a distance to it. Like you were showing us light but not letting us feel it. These new pieces," she gestured, "though I couldn't see, they're raw, emotional. They make me feel what you felt when you painted them." I didn't know how to respond. I'd never thought about my work that way. "Thank you," I finally said. She moved on. Others came. More questions, more observations. Some people praised the work. Some were clearly confused by it. Some said nothing, which was worse than any criticism. After an hour, Dr. Finch found me. He'd brought colleagues, neurologists, researchers. They wanted to discuss my case, to understand the mechanism behind my partial recovery. I answered their questions mechanically. Yes, the colors came during painting. No, I couldn't control when they appeared. Yes, they seemed to correspond with strong emotional memories. One of them asked if I'd consent to long-term monitoring to help advance understanding of neuroplasticity and recovery after stroke. I said yes, because if this could help someone else, it was worth any inconvenience. As they talked, I heard someone gasp across the room. Then another voice. Excited. Clara was suddenly beside me, gripping my arm. "Edward," she said, "you need to hear this." "Hear what?" "Just listen." I focused. A man was speaking. Older. Authoritative. I recognized him. James Morrison, the most influential art critic in the city. He destroyed careers with a single review. He was talking about my work. I held my breath. "What strikes me most about these paintings," he was saying, is their courage. Not the courage to paint while blind. That's impressive, certainly. But the courage to paint vulnerability, to show us not perfection, but process, not mastery, but love. These works aren't about light as a technical achievement. They're about light as a lifeline, and that makes them essential. Clara's hand tightened on my arm. I couldn't speak. Morrison continued, I've reviewed Edward Langley's work for 20 years, and I can say without hesitation that these are the finest paintings he's ever created, not despite his blindness, because of what his blindness forced him to discover. The room was quiet. Then someone started clapping. Others joined. The sound grew until it filled the entire gallery. I stood there, frozen. Clara was crying. I could hear it. I felt tears on my own face, too. For 20 years, I'd chased perfection. I'd tried to capture light with technical precision, and I'd succeeded. But I'd never touched anyone the way Morrison said these paintings touched him. It took losing my sight to learn how to really see. The exhibition stayed up for 6 weeks. It sold out in 3. Collectors, museums, private buyers. People I'd never heard of wanted my work, not out of pity, but because they saw something in it that mattered. Dr. Finch published his case study. It was picked up by medical journals, news outlets, documentary filmmakers. Everyone wanted to know about the blind painter who'd taught his brain to see again. But I wasn't fully blind anymore. The colors were coming more frequently now. Red and orange almost daily. Yellow at least once a week. And recently, blue. Just once. But clear and unmistakable. Dr. Finch said my visual cortex was showing increased activity. That new neural pathways were forming. That my brain was quite literally rewiring itself through memory and imagination and love. He couldn't promise full recovery. He said I'd likely never have normal vision again. But what I was experiencing was remarkable, unprecedented, a testament to the brain's capacity to adapt and heal. I didn't need full vision. I just needed enough. Enough to keep painting, enough to keep connecting with Clara, enough to keep finding light in the darkness. One evening, 3 months after the exhibition, Clara and I sat in the studio. We just finished a new piece, something large and ambitious, a landscape from memory. The garden where we'd gotten married 29 years ago. She described it to me. The roses in full bloom, the arbor covered in wisteria, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the grass. I painted what I remembered, what I felt, what the colors told me to paint. When I finished, Clara was silent for a long time. Then she said quietly, Edward, I need to tell you something. What is it? This painting. It's exactly what our wedding garden looked like. The composition, the colors, the way the light fell. You weren't just remembering. You were seeing it the way it actually was. That's impossible. I haven't been there in decades. I know, but somehow you got it right. Every detail. I set down my brush. My hands were shaking. Maybe it was luck. Or maybe, she said softly, your brain really is finding its way back. I wanted to believe her, but I'd learned to be careful with hope. That night, I dreamed in color for the first time since the stroke. Vivid, clear, complete. When I woke, the colors were still there, fading, but present, like after images burned into my mind. I lay in bed and watched them dissolve. Red becoming orange, becoming yellow, becoming nothing. But they'd been there, in my sleep, in my subconscious. My brain was practicing vision even when I wasn't trying. The next morning, I told Dr. Finch about the dream. He wasn't surprised. He said dreaming in color was a strong indicator that visual processing was being restored. Not completely, but measurably. He scheduled more tests, more scans. He was writing a book now about neuroplasticity and recovery, about how the brain could heal itself when given the right conditions. about how love and memory and purpose could literally rewire neural pathways. I told him that sounded like science fiction. He said it was just science, and that I was living proof. Clara asked me what I wanted to do next. Now that the exhibition was over, now that I'd proven I could still paint, now that my brain was slowly, impossibly healing, I want to keep painting, I said. Every day, with you, for as long as I can. That's all. That's everything. She smiled. I could hear it in her voice. Then that's what we'll do. And we did. Every afternoon, 2 o'clock, like clockwork. We painted together. She described. I translated. We created. The colors kept coming, blue more frequently now, and occasionally green. Brief flashes, but enough. Always enough. 6 months after the stroke, I painted something from imagination rather than memory. An abstract piece, pure color and emotion. No reference, no description from Clara. Just me and the canvas and the colors I could feel but not quite see. When I finished, Clara gasped. She called Dr. Finch. She called friends. She took photos. I asked what was wrong. Nothing's wrong, she said. It's just, Edward, you used perspective. You created depth. You painted light emerging from shadow. You painted things you couldn't possibly see. And you got them right. How is that possible? She took my hands. Because you never really lost sight. You just lost the ability to use your eyes. But your brain still knows what light looks like, what form looks like, what beauty looks like. And when you paint, all of that comes back. That painting sold for more than anything I'd ever created before. A museum bought it. They wanted to feature it in an exhibition about art and neuroscience, about creativity and disability, about what humans can do when they refuse to give up. I agreed. Not for the money, not for the recognition, but because maybe my story could help someone else, someone sitting in darkness, someone who'd lost something they thought defined them, someone who needed to know that endings could become beginnings. The museum exhibition opened in October. They titled it Sight Unseen: The Art of Edward Langley. Clara and I attended the opening. I gave a short talk, just 5 minutes, about painting, about love, about the brain's remarkable ability to heal itself when given a reason. I talked about how I'd thought my life as a painter was over, how I'd believed that without sight, I couldn't create, how Clara had proven me wrong. I talked about how art wasn't about perfect technique or technical mastery. It was about connection, between the artist and the viewer, between memory and imagination, between two people standing in front of a canvas, trying to make something beautiful together. When I finished, the room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then everyone. Clara held my hand. I could feel her shaking. Or maybe I was the one shaking. I couldn't tell anymore. After the talk, people approached us. Some were artists who'd experienced similar losses. Vision, mobility, hearing. They wanted to know if recovery was possible for them too. I told them the truth, that I didn't know, that every brain was different, that every injury was unique, but that giving up guaranteed failure, and trying guaranteed nothing except the knowledge that you'd tried. Some thanked me, some cried, some just squeezed my hand and moved on. Each one left something with me, a reminder that suffering was universal, but so was resilience. Dr. Finch pulled me aside later. He wanted to show me the latest scans. I couldn't see them, of course, but he described what they showed. Significant reorganization in my visual cortex, new pathways forming, areas that should have been dead showing signs of life. He said my case was being studied by researchers around the world, that I was contributing to fundamental understanding of how the brain heals, that people would benefit from what I'd been through. I asked him if he thought I'd ever see normally again. He chose his words carefully. I don't think you'll have vision the way you did before, but I think you're developing something else. A hybrid form of perception. Part memory, part imagination, part genuine visual processing. Something entirely unique. Is that enough? I asked. He smiled. I could hear it in his voice. Only you can answer that. I thought about it, about the colors I'd recovered, about the paintings I'd created, about the life Clara and I had rebuilt. And I realized he was right. It was enough, more than enough. That night, Clara and I returned to the studio. We didn't paint. We just sat by the window, listening to the city, cars passing, distant sirens, the wind moving through the trees. She asked me what I was thinking. I told her I was thinking about light, about how I'd spent 43 years trying to capture it on canvas, and how it took losing my sight to understand what light really was. What is it? She asked. Connection, I said. Between people, between moments, between who we were and who we become. Light isn't something you see. It's something you feel. She was quiet for a while. Then she said, "You should paint that." I can't paint a concept. You've been painting concepts for months. Love, memory, recovery. This is just one more. I considered it. She was right. Every painting I'd created since the stroke had been about invisible things. Emotions, experiences, the space between who I was and who I'd become. Okay, I said. Let's paint light. We started the next morning. It was the most ambitious piece I'd attempted. Large, abstract, pure color and form. Clara helped me choose the palette. Warm colors primarily, red, orange, gold, but with touches of cool blue and green to create contrast. We worked on it for 3 weeks. Every day, building layers, adding complexity, creating depth. Clara described what she saw emerging. I painted what I felt should be there. And as we worked, the colors came more frequently, longer, stronger. Red burned behind my closed eyes almost constantly now. Orange flickered like flames. Yellow glowed like morning sun. I was seeing more than I'd seen in months. Not the world around me, but the world inside my mind. The world I was creating on canvas. On the final day, as I added the last touches, something extraordinary happened. Clara had stepped away to answer the phone. I was alone in the studio, alone with the canvas, alone with the colors. I placed my brush on what I believed was the center of the piece, and suddenly, behind my closed eyes, I saw it. Not just color, but form, the entire composition. The way the reds curved into oranges, the way the yellows burst outward, the way the blues anchored the corners. I saw it, completely, clearly, for almost 10 seconds. When it faded, I was on my knees. The brush had fallen from my hand. I was crying, laughing, gasping for air. Clara ran back in. "Edward, what happened? Are you hurt?" I shook my head. I couldn't speak. I just pointed at the canvas. She looked at it, then at me, then back at the canvas. She understood. "You saw it," she whispered. I saw it. She knelt beside me, held me. We stayed like that for a long time. 2 people on a studio floor, surrounded by paint and light and possibility. That painting became the centerpiece of my next exhibition. I titled it simply Light. Critics called it transcendent. Collectors fought over it, but I refused to sell it because it wasn't just a painting. It was proof. Proof that the impossible was just the difficult waiting to happen. Dr. Finch's book came out the following spring. It featured my case prominently. He documented everything. The initial injury, the attempted recovery, the role of memory and imagination in rebuilding visual pathways. The neuroscience of love? That last part surprised me. I asked him what love had to do with brain science. He said everything. That the emotional motivation to recover had driven my neuroplasticity, that Clara's support had provided the framework for my healing, that without love, none of this would have worked. The book became a bestseller. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk about neuroplasticity and recovery, about how the brain could heal itself, about how what we thought was permanent might actually be changeable. I did interviews, podcasts, documentary appearances, each time telling the same story about the stroke, about the darkness, about Clara, about painting my way back to light. People asked if I had advice for others facing similar challenges. I always said the same thing. Don't give up. Don't assume the damage is permanent. Don't let what you've lost define what you can still become. And find someone who believes in you even when you can't believe in yourself. 2 years after the stroke, I held my largest exhibition yet. 50 paintings, all created after losing my sight. All proof that creativity doesn't live in the eyes. It lives in the soul. The exhibition traveled to 6 cities. Thousands of people saw it. Many wrote to me afterward, sharing their own stories of loss and recovery, thanking me for showing them that endings could become beginnings. I kept every letter, read them with Clara's help, responded to as many as I could, each one a reminder that art wasn't just about making beautiful things. It was about making connection, about showing people they weren't alone. My vision continued to improve, slowly, unpredictably, but measurably. I could see colors almost daily now, forms occasionally, complete images rarely but increasingly. Dr. Finch said I might eventually recover partial functional vision, enough to navigate, maybe enough to see faces, but probably never enough to drive or read or see the world the way I once had. I told him that was okay, because I had learned something more important than sight. I'd learned that perception was more than just eyes and light. It was memory, imagination, love, the willingness to keep reaching for what you thought you'd lost. Clara asked me once if I was angry about what had happened, about the stroke, about losing 2 years to darkness, about everything I'd had to give up. I thought about it. Then I said no, because losing my sight had taught me how to really see. Losing my old life had shown me how to build a new one. Losing everything had revealed what actually mattered. She asked what mattered. I said 2 things: creating something meaningful and doing it with someone you love. Everything else was just details. We kept painting together. Every afternoon, 2 o'clock, like always, creating new work, experimenting, pushing boundaries, not trying to recapture what I'd lost, but discovering what I'd gained, because I had gained something, a deeper understanding of light, a more profound connection to color, an ability to paint emotion rather than just image, skills I never would have developed if I'd kept my sight. The stroke had taken something from me, but it had given something back, something I couldn't name, something that lived in the space between seeing and remembering, between light and darkness, between who I was and who I'd become. On the 3rd anniversary of the stroke, Clara and I returned to the hospital where it had all begun. We stood in the same corridor where she'd cried, where I'd seen her face for what I thought was the last time. She described it to me: the fluorescent lights, the beige walls, the smell of antiseptic. Nothing had changed, except everything had changed. I asked her what she remembered from that day. She said she remembered thinking she'd lost me, that even though I was alive, the man she'd married was gone, that she didn't know how to reach someone who lived in darkness. And now, I asked, now I know you were never gone. You were just somewhere I hadn't learned to look yet. We stood there for a while. Then we left. We drove home. We went to the studio. We painted until the sun went down. And Clara had to tell me it was dark because I couldn't see the change in light. But I could feel it. The way evening has weight. The way darkness has texture. the way the world shifts when day becomes night. I painted that shift. Clara helped. We worked in near darkness. Just the studio lamp, just our voices, just the sound of brush on canvas. When we finished, Clara turned on the lights. She looked at what we'd created. She didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, she asked, "How did you know?" "Know what?" "Where to put the shadows, where the light should fall. You painted it perfectly. The exact moment day becomes night." "I didn't know," I said. "I just remembered." "No," she said softly. "You didn't remember. You saw it. Maybe not with your eyes, but you saw it." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was seeing in ways I couldn't explain. Ways that didn't require eyes, or light, or any of the things I thought vision needed. Or maybe it didn't matter how I saw, only that I did. Years passed. The colors kept coming. My vision improved incrementally. I learned to navigate by feel and memory. Learned to paint without seeing the canvas. Learned to live in a world that existed more in my mind than in my eyes. I never regained full sight. Dr. Finch said I probably never would. The damage was too extensive. The recovery had already exceeded every expectation. But I didn't need full sight. I had something better. I had Clara. I had painting. I had light living inside my mind, burning brighter than anything I'd ever seen with my eyes. I had learned that vision wasn't about eyes. It was about attention, about care, about love making the invisible visible. In the end, they asked me to give one final interview, a documentary about art and disability, about creativity and recovery, about what happens when you lose everything and somehow find something better. The interviewer asked me the question everyone always asked: "Do you wish you'd never had the stroke?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Then I said, "I wish I hadn't had to suffer. I wish Clara hadn't had to suffer. But I don't wish I hadn't learned what the stroke taught me." Which is, that light isn't something you see, it's something you become. And love isn't something you feel, it's something you practice every day, in every small way, until it becomes the only sight you need. The camera turned off. The crew packed up. Clara and I went home. We made dinner. We talked about ordinary things. We went to bed, and in my dreams, I painted. Colors swirling, light emerging, Clara's voice guiding me, my hands moving across infinite canvas. When I woke, I couldn't remember the specific images, but I remembered the feeling. Joy, purpose, connection. The sense that I was exactly where I needed to be. I got up. I went to the studio. I touched the canvas waiting there. Rough, cool, empty, full of possibility. Clara joined me a few minutes later, coffee in hand, ready to paint. She asked what I wanted to create today. I said I didn't know, but we'd figure it out together. We always did, and as we worked, as her voice described colors and my hand translated them into form, as light slowly returned in fragments and flashes, I understood something I'd never understood before. I hadn't lost my sight in that hospital corridor 3 years ago. I just learned to see differently, through memory, through imagination, through love. And maybe, just maybe, that was the truest sight of all.